I'm at your bedroom window. A warning to my fellow travelers. If you ever have a layover in Philly overnight, don't spend your night at the economy motel, and if you absolutely must, steer clear of room 103. I was headed south to visit some family members for a few weeks, and unfortunately, the only flight available included a 7-hour layover in Philadelphia. Not wanting to spend those hours huddled outside an airport, I rented the cheapest motel I could find and took the shuttle over. At about 11 p.m., the place was just about the shadiest looking motel I'd ever seen. But it was a bed, right? I checked in and headed to my room 103. Exhausted, I immediately collapsed on the bed. A bit lumpy, but not terrible. Not bothering to take my contacts out, I closed my eyes and let my thoughts wander. I was yanked back into reality by a loud grumbling from my stomach. Right. The airline hadn't fed us. Annoyed, I dug around in my bag for one of those microwavable soup cups, which I tossed in the room's microwave. As the microwave rattled away, I noticed a piece of paper wedged underneath it. I yanked it out and unfolded it. There were 2 words scribbled on it, hastily. Don't look. What? Whatever. I tossed it aside and retrieved my soup. Feeling lonely, I hopped online to see if anyone was on. I was lucky. My long-distance boyfriend happened to be on Discord. I called him up. We chatted a while, trying to keep our voices down, but eventually, though, he said something that made me laugh. I heard a muffled curse come from upstairs, and feeling really guilty, I said my good nights and ended the call, with the intention of getting a bit of rest before my next flight. As I lay in the dark room, I noticed a thin stream of light coming from where the curtain didn't close completely. Annoyed, I got up. It was almost at the window when I heard it. I can see you in your bedroom. The voice sent chills up my spine. It was very quiet and high-pitched, like a child's. It was so soft. I wasn't sure that I hadn't just imagined it. I shook my head and reached for my curtain. I know you can hear me. I'm at your bedroom window. I know you can hear me. I jumped back from the shadow that crossed the stream of light covering my room. I definitely hadn't imagined it. That time, there was a voice directly outside my bedroom door. Someone was out there looking in, and I jumped back into my bed and pulled the covers up to my chin. I'm at your bedroom window. I know you can hear me. I know you can hear me. Come, take a look. Take a look. Take a look. I'm at your bedroom window. The taunting went on and on, rattling into my thoughts, leaving me paralyzed in fear. Suddenly, I heard the tenant upstairs moving around again. Footsteps stomped over the door above, and I heard muffled shouting. Hey! Shut up down there! This isn't funny. I have work in 4 hours. The door upstairs slammed, and there was silence. I breathed a sigh of relief and leaned back against my pillow, determined to get some sleep. I'm still out here. Come. Look out the window. I sat straight up, heart pounding in my ears. The voice was back. It whispered on and on, repeating its mantra. Over and over and over and over again. I put my hands over my ears, rocked back and forth, trying to block out the sound. It was no use. The longer I sat there, the louder it got, until I could hear it so clearly it sounded like it was right next to me. Frantic, I picked up my phone and dialed the police. Streaming and stuttering with fright, I managed to give them the information where I was and what was wrong. Please help me, I'm scared. I don't care if it was just a prank at this point. My mind was reeling in horror. The officers assured me they'd be over shortly. to see what the issue was. I thanked them and hung up the phone. As soon as I did, the silence devoured over the room. It wasn't just a voice. No. Utter silence filled the room. The air conditioner stopped. The street noises outside ceased. Even the faint hum of the electricity from the TV and the lights went away. It pressed on my ears with a terrible heaviness that sent shivers through me. Next to me, my phone rang. The caller ID told me it was the police station calling me back. Cautiously, I picked up the phone and answered. Hello? I whispered. They aren't coming, growled the voice. And every light went out, plunging the room into complete darkness. In the dark, I fumbled for my bag. I might have had a flashlight, but I didn't have my video camera, which had a weak light on it. Besides, I can't deny what I wanted to film this. It was the only proof that I had that I wasn't going insane. Finding it, I turned on the camera. The dim light over the room, even with the light on, the shadows still consumed the edges of my vision, making me jump at every perceived motion. I caught the corner of my eye shaking. I forced myself to focus the camera. Carefully, I stood out of the bed and walked towards where I thought the curtain was. The thin light from where the camera only served to give me a vague outline of the curtain. As the darkness had swallowed the room, was even now working against the light from my camera. Carefully, I reached out and touched the curtain, pushing it closed. Whatever was out there couldn't look now. As I did, I heard a loud clicking sound next to me, like the latch turning on the door. Panicked, I whipped around, looked at the door. Inexplicably, I had only opened it on its own. The latching sound that I'd heard, however, was the door getting caught by the extra security lock. I could see nothing through the crack, just more inky blackness outside. I slammed the door and shut it again, double-checking the locks and the latches. Everything was in place, and breathed a sigh of relief. That's when I heard it. A sort of scuttling around coming from the back of my room, somewhere in the direction of the bathroom. Cautiously, I moved slowly towards the noise, trying to keep my hands from shaking too badly. I knew whatever footage I had got was probably a mess of the wobbly camera, but my videographer skills weren't exactly at the top of my priority. At that moment, I approached the source of the noise and found nothing there, except another piece of paper wedged partially behind the wall-length mirror next to the closet. I fumbled to open it, trying not to tear it with haste. When I finally got it open, there was 2 words: "Turn around." I was not only about to do anything of that sort. Trembling, I slowly looked up in the mirror while pointing my camera behind me at the same time. To my horror, the light of the camera illuminated a faint silhouette of something behind me. All I could make out was a vague form no taller than the height of the bed, and it was moving towards me. I broke out of my paralysis and drove into the bathroom, slamming the door behind me. Quietly sobbing, I leaned against the door and slowly slid down until I was sitting on the cracked tiles of the door, firmly closed and locked behind me. Whatever it was, scrabbled a bit at the bathroom door. Then came the whisper, let me in, I'm out here in the dark, let me in." "Go away!" I screamed. The voice stopped abruptly. I shivered and let out the breath that I'd been holding in tightly. I still clung to my camera, unwilling to let go, to the one thing that was keeping me tethered to reality. I sat there until the rays of early sunlight began peeking under the door. I knew I was safe. Carefully, I cracked open the door and peeked around the closet. The coast was clear. In a rush, I grabbed my luggage, raced out the door to the hotel manager, looked at me some kind of oddly, but I wasn't going back in that room. I spent the next hour waiting for the shuttle. flight to my aunt's house was short, uneventful. I spent the flight running over what had happened over and over in my mind. Could it have been a prank? Who could have done that? It didn't matter. It was over. I was out of that insane place. On my way to my family and friends, I tried to put the whole thing behind me and just enjoy the ride. I've always loved flying. Watching the world fall away behind me is one of the most incredible feelings. The patterns beneath you, the rivers, the ponds, the winding roads spotted here with cottony clouds shadowing the land. This time, however, I couldn't enjoy the scenery. I was too on edge from the previous night's events. The plane finally landed, and just about ran to meet my aunt and cousins. Finally, I could start my vacation and get back to a normal state of mind. I hugged my aunt and little cousin so tight just to be sure they were real. We all laughed and packed the car with my luggage and head home. I didn't tell her about the motel. That night, my aunt made my favorite pan-seared salmon dripping with lemon and butter. Since she lived so close to the beach, it was fresh from the day's catch. I didn't think I'd ever have anything so sweet and fresh. Sitting here with my family, I could almost laugh off the events of the nights before. Almost. Silence descended upon the house as the night fell upon us, bringing with it a thick fog. The little cousins toddled off to bed, yawning and rubbing their eyes. My aunt and I sat quietly at the living room, her reading over me silently, recalling the night before over and over and over. Finally exhausted, I got up and announced that I was heading to bed early. A bit surprised, my aunt wished me to have a good night. I hurried to my room to collapse. Once again, however, I felt unease creep around me. The only lamp in the room was a bright overhead, too bright to sleep with. And with the fog, thick as it was, no light came in from the outside. As if it wasn't unsettling enough, at the front of my bed was a large window. And there was no curtain, only a veteran blind. I shivered and turned to my side. I couldn't see the window. Slowly I fell into a fitful sleep. I woke, somewhere around 3 a.m., to an odd squeaking noise like nails running across a glass of tile. Confused, I sat up, looked around, blinking my eyes slowly and adjusting to the darkness. Still, I couldn't see that what could be making that noise. In fact, it seemed to be coming from somewhere outside. My heart rate quickened as I stood up and approached my bedroom window. With shaking fingers, I reached to pull open the blinds. I yanked it down with one swift tug. The blinds flew open. Nothing. I let out a breath. I'd been holding in a rush. I'd only imagined it. Or had I? As I glanced down, I noticed the long, slightly sludged mark near the bottom of the window, as though some grubby hand or paw had been running along the glass, looking for a way in. I dropped the blinds, dashed back into the bed, and pulled in the covers over my head, desperate to get some sleep. I'd like to say it seemed impossible that I'd never get back to sleep after that. But eventually I drifted off, dreaming of strange noises and small scuttering creatures hiding just at the end of my vision. I woke up late in the morning, head withered with fog from some restless night. My phone was buzzing next to me. Squinting, I glanced at it to see I had 5 unread messages, all from my aunt. I shook my head, not wanting to bother with the moment. I fell back against my lumpy pillow. Wait. Something was wrong. My eyes flew open. I sat up. Even without glasses or contacts, I could tell I wasn't in my room. I wasn't at my aunt's house. But no, I couldn't be. I wasn't, no. I was back in the motel room from the night before. I tried to scream, but only choked. Cry escaped my lips. I looked back at my phone. Every message from my aunt was a variation of "Where are you?" Still in my pajamas, I ran to the door and threw it open, dashed through the office in a panic. I ran immediately, starting to beg the manager for help. He looked up, startled, not at me, but at the door. I had just come through. That door again. I thought I fixed that damn thing. Without a single glance at me, he walked over, shoved the door closed, gave it an extra push with his shoulder. He hadn't even seen me. Later, I returned to 103, numb and confused as I sat on the bed. I heard the voice one last time. "You're mine now," it taunted. I didn't care. I couldn't even muster up the emotion anymore. I lost count of the days at this point. I've spent here now. I don't think I'm dead, just not quite synced up with the rest of the world. These days, I'm the one leaving the notes, warning travelers not to look in the window. Most of them laugh when they see the scribblings, but don't worry too much. It's the people that dwell on it too long that worry me. They're the ones that listen too closely to my voice in the window. They're the ones that might end up like me someday. There's a young couple staying here tonight. I'm sitting outside now, waiting for them to quiet down, to go to sleep. I'm trying not to think of how life was before I ended up here. I mean, I've tried leaving, but I can't get past the parking lot entrance. The only knowledge I get from the outside world is from my phone and the occasional news program I watch during what passes for a continental breakfast at the motel. I think the two inside have fallen asleep. Well, he has at least. I'm not worried about him, but his girlfriend or fiance or whatever, I'm concerned for her. She's still up. Her eyes are darting around. I know she saw my note. She's definitely upset. She's a perfect target. Excuse me now. I'm going to huddle in the closet with my hands over my ears. The voices are starting soon.